I'm just wondering, do you, when you look back and are honest with yourself, do you feel that you sort of bought into a narrative here that we all know is completely false? I mean, the president's out there saying 5,000 dead people voted in Georgia. 2 dead people voted in Georgia. But it was rhetoric like that that got people like you on board. Do you feel you were duped?
Well, I think that there is an issue that there are tens of millions of Americans who are concerned about whether there are safeguards in our election process.
But they're concerned because of lies like that. But they're concerned because of lies like that. That is a lie. They heard that. If I heard that and believed it, I might be concerned too. But it's not true.
Well, that is why we have to have that is why we should be having a hearing into the process to see what safeguards are needed. Where were these prior convictions that took place in various states? How do we make the system better? How do we restore the faith of the American people that when they go to vote, their vote does count and it matters? That is what this is all about. And if we can have a public hearing about it, and a discussion and a debate on the House floor instead of attacking people personally, I think we would actually get somewhere.
I just want to make sure that you are clear. There was no widespread fraud. There is no question about what happened in this election. And that is very different than saying we want to make sure that every vote counts that should count and every vote that shouldn't. Those are 2 very different things to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. And I've never said anything about widespread fraud. I've said that there have been certain irregularities that need to be looked at closer and that the American people deserve to know if that took place in this election, and it appears that it did in certain states, and that is all we're asking for. I think that's very fair, and that would just ease the minds of tens of millions of Americans who feel that the election wasn't fair. So let's just, I think that that's something worthwhile to be looking at and spending time.
Just one final point on this. Those tens of millions of Americans think that it wasn't fair because Donald Trump told them that, and that voice of Donald Trump was amplified by other people in power. Okay? Because the reason they believe it wasn't fair is because someone told them it wasn't fair, and it was fair.
I guess all of the Republicans who jumped on the sedition train didn't quite take into account the part after the failed insurrection where they'd have to actually be held to account for it. This is freshman Republican lawmaker Nicole Malliotakis contending with the fact that she aided and abetted Donald Trump in his plot to incite an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. And while she might try to explain it away, CNN's Aaron Burnett doesn't seem too keen on letting that happen. It's telling, too, that whenever any of these Republicans come forward to try and defend themselves over supporting Trump's big lie, which is that the election was stolen, the issue that they always bring up is, well, Americans are concerned and so we should look into it on behalf of our concerned constituents. And yet none of them manage to acknowledge the fact that the reason their constituents are concerned in the first place is because those very elected officials perpetuated that lie. Of course they're concerned. You literally just made them concerned and then pointed to that fact as if it's some justification to move forward. This is really no different than if I walked into a theater and started screaming fire. Everyone gets up and starts running outside, and then I ask them what's wrong, and they say, there's a fire, and I act like that's news to me. It is nothing more than bad faith circular logic that Republicans like this one know is BS, but continue to air it anyway. And this is what they're reduced to after realizing how poorly received their seditious behavior actually is. When they had Trump spewing this stuff all over Twitter like a fire hose, along with most of the GOP and Fox News and OAN and Newsmax, they all looked at that and figured, hey, being a traitor to the Constitution seems pretty low risk. Everyone's doing it, and maybe we can undermine democracy and stage a coup. But while the sowing part seemed like a grand old time, the reaping part is clearly less fun. Because now, Trump is out of office and has zero social media. Most of conservative media is dealing with defamation lawsuits. Cruz and Hawley are facing calls to resign or be expelled from the Senate. Investigators are trying to determine whether Republican lawmakers played a role in the insurrection itself. And the rest of them are stuck looking like idiots on national television with tepid excuses trying to explain away why they were helping incite a coup. Nicole Malliotakis even has the audacity, while trying to justify her position, to claim that she's only interested in restoring faith for the American people, that when they go vote, they trust that their vote counts. But here's the thing. There's no problem with that system. There is zero evidence of widespread fraud or nefarious behavior. Sure, a few people in each state commit fraud, but 2 dead voters in Georgia is not going to swing an election. So the point is that the systems we have in place to ensure an accurate count of the votes that have already been cast are already strong. The issue here isn't that, it's Republicans, people like Representative Malliotakis herself, casting doubt on those very systems. That's the actual issue. So if she's being honest that she only wants to look out for her constituents and to trust that their votes count, she should consider the fact that the only reason there isn't faith in an otherwise secure system is because of people like her. By the way, if she needs proof that our systems are secure, consider the fact that recounts and audits in a number of the so-called disputed states all confirm the original counts. In Georgia's recount, the highest error rate in any county recount was 0.73%, while most counties found no change in their final tally, and the majority of the remaining counties had changes of fewer than 10 ballots. In Wisconsin, where Trump paid for a recount in 2 overwhelmingly Democratic counties, because clearly the fraud only happened in blue counties, out of the 507,000 votes, there was a net change of 87 votes, meaning 0.01%. And those same numbers presented themselves in numerous other states, where hand-counted recounts and audits from paper ballots would have proven any of these claims that there were discrepancies or that we shouldn't trust our electoral process, meaning that this issue has already been adjudicated, and any attempts by these Republicans to continue, even now, to show up on air and pretend that they're just innocently looking out for the will of their constituents is purposeful, willful manipulation, and it should be treated as exactly that. Consider too that in this very interview, Malliotakis concedes outright that there was no widespread fraud. And so that begs the question, why object to certifying Biden's election win? If she herself acknowledges that there may have been only a few instances of fraud, then why did she perpetuate a scheme that was intended to stop Biden from becoming president? If it was really about just shoring up election integrity against what I assume are the occasional handfuls of fraud around the United States, then maybe the answer isn't to, oh, I don't know, try and stop a duly elected president from taking office, for starters. And look, of course we always want to get any and all fraud cases down to zero, but A, pointing to the fact that there are any instances of fraud does not mean the entire system is broken. You don't abolish cars because someone had an accident. You don't close down all stores because someone shoplifted. You see where the vulnerabilities are and you improve those systems for next time. And B, the fact that we know about the instances of fraud that do exist prove that the system is working. Those instances of fraud were found, meaning that the procedures that were put in place to discover fraud have discovered fraud. And that's a fair conversation to have, but just so that we're clear, this is not the conversation that these Republicans who objected to Biden's certification were trying to have. So good on Erin Burnett for holding the Republican lawmaker to account, and not a single day should go by throughout the rest of these people's careers where they aren't reminded about their efforts to help incite an insurrection at the Capitol. Because no matter what they did before or what they do after, this should be their only legacy. While you're here, please check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. I take a deep dive into the top stories of the week, and I also interview major players in the world of politics, like Kamala Harris, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Pete Buttigieg, Katie Porter, Al Franken, Cory Booker, Jamie Harrison, Mary Trump, and many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.